Welcome to Opposition Territory here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world, 12 years strong. And this week, we're going to be diving into the Miami Marlins and what this team has been doing, what they haven't been doing as well during this 2025 MLB season. We've got our good friend from fishonfirst.com. He's one of the contributors over there, Ely Sussman. Buddy, how you doing, man?
It's great to be back, Jeff. I'll keep it concise, but it's a really fascinating start to the season for the Marlins.
It really is in a lot of ways. Look, this is a Marlins team that's at the bottom of the NL East division. We're certainly going to be getting into it, but this team, there are, like you said, there's a lot of interesting aspects to this team, and I hate using the word underrated team in Major League Baseball, but sometimes I feel there's some underrated aspects to this team, Eli.
Yeah, it is when a team is just so inexperienced. That's
Yeah.
kind of the main ingredient for people to be overlooked because until you have a track record, it just takes time to be recognized, especially in what they operate as a small market team in a way that it's not a whole lot of guys that have long track records. And as a team, if you just don't accomplish a lot collectively, it lends yourself to that. So, yeah, for sure. These guys really have to stand out for an extended period of time to get attention.
Absolutely. And again, folks, talking to Ely Sussman from fishonfirst.com. Where else can they find you on the interwebs out there? I believe you're on Twitter, right, Eli?
Yeah, they can personally at Real Ely, ELY. But otherwise, I am all over what we do at FOF. So anywhere, any platform that you're getting your baseball coverage, search for Fish on First, and you'll find us there covering the Marlins.
All right, very good. Well, look, before we really start diving into this Marlins team and what we've been seeing during this season, Eli, I wanted to really get your take overall on what the NL East has looked at this point as we are into May here. I mean, the Mets are at the top of the division with the Phillies about 2.5 games behind them as we are recording this. I mean, the Braves are fourth in the division, a bit of a surprise this season. And when they started out of the gate losing how many in a row, it was really surprising. You know, the Nats are the Nats in various ways. But again, talking about this Marlins team and what they could be at some point down the road here, what are your overall thoughts about this division here at this point in the season?
Yeah, the first few weeks, very loopy start for the division. All I can say is now, I think it's settling into more of what people had in mind, which is to say 4 teams that are better than the Marlins are right
Right.
now. And what stands out about the Mets, for sure, yeah, the reason why they're have a little bit of a cushion is that their pitching has just been outrageously good, even from guys that we didn't necessarily expect to be that good.
Surprised me for sure.
Yeah, and realistically, I think that's what's going to slow them down as the year goes on and make it a winnable division for both the Phillies and the Braves. Even, yeah, with the Braves in particular, coming into the year, the thought was so much is riding on how much Acuna they get back, how much Spencer Strider they get back, how close those guys are to their peak form. And so to this moment, they're treading water without them after that original frightening losing streak. And it's still going to depend on those guys. They got very little from them to this point in the season. That will largely determine whether they can be a serious threat to the Mets. And if not, it's going to be the Mets and the Phillies. I think the Phillies are still an extremely experienced and deep team, both in terms of their lineup and in terms of their rotation. They've had
Yep.
several guys that aren't quite performing up to their historical norms. And so it's just going to be a question about where they are in terms of that balance between experience and maybe getting a little too old. So perhaps as the year goes on, there's an infusion of youth from their farm system coming up to the majors in a way that makes a difference for them. So I still think they're in the hunt. And even the Washington Nationals, I was surprised by how bad they were early on. A lot of that was because their bullpen was a train wreck. And as time has gone on, it's been, every other day it's a train wreck. So it allows them to actually win a decent amount of games with the young talent that they have. So I think they're even a little step ahead, a half step ahead, you could say, of where the Marlins are. That leaves Miami in last place. And we'll see as the season goes on. They still have some tricks up their sleeves that could make it more interesting, at least than it was in 2024.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I do think there are elements to this Marlins team, like we initially said at the top, that are very intriguing. Look, they're 13-20 as of us recording this. And yes, they're at the bottom of the NL East here. But I'm wondering, like, what has been the biggest challenge for this Marlins team so far this season, what you've seen with your eyes, and why have they had these challenges? Can they overcome them as well? What are your thoughts here, Eli?
It comes down to the starting pitching, which was an issue last year because they had like an avalanche of injuries in spring training that put them in a tough spot. This year, not really the same excuse. They had guys, most notably Sandy Alcantara, coming back from injury. And there was so much excitement about how he looked in spring. So it really starts with him, just because expectations were that he would slide right back in as the ace of their rotation. And instead,
Right.
he's been terrible. It's an
Yeah.
ERA of 8. He's not working deep into games either. That combination of allowing a ton of runs, but also not saving the bullpen has had a trickle down effect to the rest of the pitching staff, where their bullpen as a whole has had to pitch more innings than any other in the big leagues to this point. Well, in addition to him, it's just several other guys in this rotation. Edward Cabrera has an ERA near 7. Cal Quantrill was their lone free agent signing on the pitching side, and he's been just as bad as Alcantara has been. There's that's natural. Even at the moment, it was fair to second guess why they invested in him and not any of the other free agent starters that could have made an impact. That group as a whole, aside from Max Meyer, he's been the bright spot. He had an incredible game just a couple weeks ago, striking out 14 with 0 walks.
Yeah.
And overall, he's been a big step forward from last year. As a whole, though, this rotation's been terrible. Their rotation ERA is 6.71
Is
this
that what
season.
it is?
It looks like a typo. The
My
six
gosh.
It feels like it has to be a lower number, but it isn't. It's just so far and away the worst rotation in the league to this point in the season. I think that's going to improve. I still have this unconditional trust in Sandy to make adjustments as the year goes on to figure out himself post Tommy John surgery. And they do have reinforcements coming. Ryan Weathers is about a week away from rejoining their rotation. Yuri Perez is about a month away from rejoining the rotation as well. So, fingers crossed there's not additional injuries. It could be a really good group by the middle of the summer, but they've just put themselves in such a deep hole because of that.
Yeah, I tend to think, as we're moving along with the conversation here, Eli, I tend to think that even teams that are looked at as, bad baseball teams have some optimism somewhere for the future. And that's my positive outlook on the sports world in general, as a true sports fan, wanting to see various teams do well. And when we look at what the Marlins' future might be in the years to come, they have certain pieces in place right now. What you were just talking about, there could be some optimism, perhaps a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel when certain guys start coming back from injuries, and what this team looks like inevitably with those guys. I'm wondering, what do you think is the bright spot on this team that we really should be focused on as baseball fans? Is there that bright light that we can say, what, there's something special that could be coming from the Marlins at some point down the road?
Yeah, the surprise has been the offense, which I thought was going to be terrible this year, similar to how it was last year. And instead, you look up, they have almost as many runs scored as the Phillies do to this point in
Yes.
the season. It's like a quarter of a run per game difference. I did not see that coming at all. They've just been really consistent offensively. The guy in the middle of that at the moment, there's really two. There's Kyle Stowers, who's been in the middle of it throughout the entire year. He's the one where he's had two huge moments this year: an opening day walk off, and then a walk off grand slam just this past weekend against the A's. He won National League Player of the Week. He's just been a huge revelation after struggling so much last summer, which was his first time coming with the Marlins after being acquired via trade. And the other one is Augustine Ramirez. He was the headliner in the Jazz Chisholm Jr. trade last summer. He's a catcher in name only. I think he's going to be a DH long term, but he could be their basically an everyday DH, like a Jordan Alvarez light. That is the upside that he has offensively. He had another huge home run right before we recorded this. So he's just been, in his first week in the majors was pretty historic on its own in terms of how much extra base hit damage he's providing. That's been a nice surprise. And just as a whole, so many other guys on this group have had brief spells where they've been really productive in a way that 1 through 9 on most nights is actually a pretty decent group. All these guys with many years of club control still remaining. It's one of the cheapest lineups in baseball, but it's one that
Absolutely.
guys that you can expect to actually get better as the years move on. So I thought they were a little farther away from getting to that level. It should be noted that the mastermind behind the torpedo bats is on the Marlins coaching staff. He was previously with the Yankees, but
Right,
Aaron
right.
Lendhart is the one that came up with that. And so he now has this vague behind in the shadows role as their field coordinator right now. I don't know exactly how much that ties into the improvement they've shown, but it has turned around a lot quicker than I thought offensively, in a way that maybe it does line up with this pitching staff sometime, if not next year, then perhaps 2 years from now. But it looks like the rebuilds could be shorter than I initially feared that it would be.
Right, right. I mean, you take a look at how a team can falter every now and again, and even a front office as well. Because look, I mean, let's be honest, the Marlins front office has not been, the most solid in terms of its decision making necessarily over the years, in terms of how much they're paying players as well, which you mentioned. And I wonder, if we somehow miss talent sometimes, or not miss it, but we just don't realize that it's in front of us. So I'm wondering, who is one of the most underrated Marlins players of this season, in your opinion, Eli? And I'm wondering if it is one Dane Myers. And even though he's not an everyday player, you wrote a really interesting piece on him recently on fishonfirst.com, which I thought was interesting. Is it Myers or someone else who might be one of the most underrated players on this team at the moment?
Dane Myers is a good place to start because somebody that was underrated by his own organization coming into the year, that is reflected in the playing time that he's been getting, where only right now it seems that he's their main center fielder moving forward. It took them a while to trust him just to hit against right-handed pitching, where he's a small side platoon sort of guy. And I was scratching my head about it because he's a 29-year-old where you might as well find out what you have in him now. There's
Right.
not much more development that's going to go on
Right.
here.
Yep.
It just took a while for them to, yeah, for him to get that opportunity. He had this really embarrassing injury last year where he kicked a wall out of frustration after being ejected in a game, and that cost him a big chunk of the 2024 season. So that is part of the reason why he hasn't gotten this opportunity previously. But he has just hit his way into a regular role, and it's not just that; it's his defense too. He has 5 outfield assists already this season. He has an amazing arm because he's a converted pitcher. He was a failed pitching prospect that just has been really effective as a hitter throughout the upper minors and finally get an opportunity in the big leagues. So as we speak, he is their team leader in wins above replacement over everybody, over Sandy, over Xavier Edwards, who had a great season last year, over everybody, over Kyle Stowers, who has been so consistent. But it's Dane Myers, even in not quite a qualified hitter in terms of overall playing time. That's he's hitting
Yeah.
350 with good defense. It kind of just speaks for itself that he's a good athlete in what should be the prime of his career. But this is really his first time getting that exposure and getting that opportunity. He has absolutely crushed it so far.
Absolutely. And I think with Dane Myers, again, he's probably in the you want to probably say the latter part of his career, but there's something that the Marlins saw in him, and he's now a contributor on this team. And there's a lot of stories like that around the game of baseball, and certainly Major League Baseball as well. We like to highlight them here, and I thought it was a really great piece that you wrote, but moving along, we know that there are leaders on this Marlins team as well that are really trying to, get this team out of the basement. And I'm wondering, Eli, like what role has team leadership, both from the front office and even from a veteran player standpoint, played in shaping the Marlins' identity and that level of resilience that they have had during this 2025 season? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, they have been very on message from the front office down, from ownership down, from Bruce Sherman down. But I would point to Peter Bendix as their president of baseball operations. This is now his second year in the gig, where he's just been really insistent about how they want to be an innovative organization. They want to try new things, even if they look weird from the outside. And even if
Right.
they, most importantly, even if they don't work immediately, to still have buy in from the coaches and from the players themselves about being able to do this. I mean, one example that gains some attention in spring training is how they don't even do traditional bullpen sessions anymore for their pitchers. They call them pitch design, and in terms of how they actually go about that process is a little bit differently than what players are used to. They're facing their live, they're basically throwing live batting practice on a consistent basis and facing their teammates between every single start instead of doing traditional bullpen sessions, stuff like that. Where I mentioned before, it's not working. Where their starting rotation has been awful this year. The results aren't there,
Right.
but it is still so important that through the transition, that Sandy Alcantara, as the longest tenure player on the team, he's still buying in on it. He's not blaming it for his struggles. He's continuing to subscribe to what they're trying to teach and what exactly they're pointing towards in terms of what they think can give this team an edge. For a team that is right now, they have the lowest payroll in baseball this year. It will go up in the coming years. It has been up in the past, but they're always going to be at a disadvantage, especially in this division. In this division, they're almost assured of being the lowest spenders of this group. They need to find advantages. They need to find inefficiencies. I The previous front office, I don't think was really that into doing it. And this new group, they've invested for what they have spent. They've spent a lot of money behind the scenes on technology, on expanding their research staff in order to uncover these edges. And it just goes back to the most important thing is getting the players to buy in, and
Yeah.
and so far they are, because of that. What Peter Bendix's messaging has been to this point in the season. Eventually, patience only goes so far if you're losing for an extended period of time. This is now year 2 of this, but yeah, to this point there is buy-in about players understanding that they try these different sort of things, that this is their path to maybe having more success than their talent level would lead them to have if they were with a different organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as we close out our discussion here, Eli, I'm wondering, what do you think the internal expectations are for the rest of this season? I mean, is it possibly getting a wild card spot if the pitching somehow can come around and maybe find some consistency? Or is it perhaps just honing in on player development? And how might these goals of this season help to really shape some of the maybe weekly decision making by the coaching staff and even the front office staff? What are your thoughts here to close us out?
I think internally the expectations are all about development. During the
Yeah,
first couple of weeks of the season, when things were going well and they were right around 500 and over 500, it's easy to point to like jump up and down publicly and say, "I told you so, I told you so."
right,
But
right.
I don't. They were not expecting that. I think realistically, they're on pace for close to 100 losses at this moment. They're ideally, I think they should be better than that once the starting pitching comes around a little bit. Once even more of their prospects that are in the upper minors get called up, and just improve internally that way, they're going to be better than they were last year. So I think that's a simple baseline. Is they expect to be significantly better than last year, which finished with 100 losses, but at the same time, not realistically, in wild card contention. I mean, you never know if Sandy magically flips that switch, and goes on an incredible run, starting now, given the hole that they already faced. And maybe it's just that the National League is so deep. It's not only this division. Across the National League, you could count on one hand the number of bad teams. It's the Rockies, it's the Pirates, and it's probably the Marlins. That might be it. Across the rest of this league, it's so, even for a wild card spot, the competition is going to be so
Yeah.
fierce. So I think realistically, 2026 is their focus. They have one more opportunity, one more bite at the apple to maybe win the draft lottery. They embarrassingly last year, they were one of the worst teams in baseball. They fell all the way down to 7th in the
I
draft
know.
order. And
Uh,
that's a pretty big step back for them in terms of the like high level talent they'll be able to access this draft. So they get one more bite at that apple to try to win the lottery. And I think they are perfectly content to slow play it and be patient for one more year as a doormat before trying to take a leap forward in 2026.
Absolutely. Isn't it amazing how just like a couple draft picks can mean everything in the
Yeah.
world? It really can, and we saw that with the Marlins last year. So, again, folks, Ely Sussman from fishonfirst.com. Check out everything they have going on over there. And again, Eli, tell everybody where they can find you on the interwebs out there, buddy.
Yeah, everywhere you find Fish on First, you can find me, but personally at Real Eli on Twitter, REALELY. And yeah, so I am a whole lot to cover about this team, even given the current situation right here.
Yes.
Thanks again for having me on, Jeff.
You got it, buddy. You do good work. And folks, real quick, if you are new to watching us on YouTube, as we've been on YouTube now for about a month, these are our social media sites. And for those of you listening on whatever audio podcast you're on, you can always search us out on all social media websites. Just search out the Philadelphia Sports Table. You can find me on the Twitter/X at Jeffrey_Warren. I'm at Jeff Warren over on Blue Sky, Mr. Jeff Warren over on Threads and TikTok. Give us a follow over there. And we're going to close things out right now. Again, Eli, thanks so much, buddy. It was great talking to you, and I hope to have you on at some other point down the road, my friend.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.